I believe Ms. Squasoni is next.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kudrytsky. I'm a research professor at GW. You talked about the need for distributed generation, even down to the 10 megawatt level. I wonder if you could talk about what the ideal generation mix is for resilience. There's a lot of enthusiasm for nuclear energy, and in particular, small modular reactors. I'm an avowed skeptic. We're going to be able to do that fast and cheaply. But what would be your ideal generation mix for resilience as a whole? Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for this question. It was our function in Ukrenergo to not only to operate the system, but also to create long-term plans on the target energy mix in the country and how the transmission grid would have to be extended to meet those requirements to connect new generation. So this exercise, we call it adequacy forecast. It's made on a regular basis every year, and we do this for a 10-year horizon. So for Ukraine, the optimal generation mix would be to phase out these centralized thermal power plants and replace those with hundreds smaller installations, which would represent a mix of technologies. So basically what we would like to have is to have a backbone of the system, which would be based on very flexible gas generation, combined with battery storages, and maybe biomass installations, because Ukraine is very rich in biomass. We are a big agricultural country. Obviously, we have a lot of biomass, which is not utilized, by the way, less than 1%. And this backbone of dispatchable generation, we would combine with a meat, which is generation with zero marginal cost or almost zero marginal cost, but which is not dispatchable, wind and solar. So by constructing a proper mix of technologies, we could simulate dispatchable generation of a coal-fired power plant, but with less cost. And this combination of generation technologies would comprise for Ukraine around 3 gigawatts of dispatchable gas and biomass generation, gas peaking, semi-peaking generation, 1 gigawatt of battery storages, around 5 gigawatts of wind, and 3 to 4 gigawatts of solar. So by doing this, by rolling out this new generation, decentralized applications, decentralized installations, we would be able to phase out these centralized thermal power plants, which are major target for the attacks. Now the question is, and this is like, it's a no-brainer, okay? It's a calculation that, frankly speaking, has no alternative. So there is no possibility to argue for something else, frankly speaking. There's no big room for that. But the question mark is really, do we need to develop, or do we need to put focus on nuclear generation in Ukraine, which provides more than 50% of the coverage of demand? And if we were talking like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would say probably yes. Even despite these attacks, I would say probably yes. Because as you said, there is a huge huge movement for the nuclear energy because the global deficit of electricity, because the industry is growing faster, or demand is growing faster in many countries than supply. And because grid is scarce as well, it's quite hard to find good opportunity to connect some many installations to the grid. But now I would say that probably wind combined with batteries and combined with some smaller portion of expensive but small portion of very flexible gas generation could nicely simulate the output of a nuclear power plant. And this combination in terms of security would be more resilient, because even small modular reactor, which is unfortunately not there yet, and as we can expect, it will not be there in the next 5 years. It will not be commercialized in the next 5 years probably. But even the small modular reactors is large enough to be attacked. And it's not necessary that the adversary would attack the reactor itself, but the adversary can attack the infrastructure that connects the reactor to the grid. And it is much easier exercise. It takes, I don't know, 2 kamikaze drones. Each of them costs $50,000. And Russians launch few thousand kamikaze drones a month to Ukraine. So basically, under such conditions, the good idea would be to fully, separate from projects that encompass big generation units. Just for security reasons, it could be a good idea to look for alternatives. And because battery storages are now so ridiculously cheap comparing to what we had like 5 years ago. In my new capacity, in my new project that I'm leading, we are discussing less than $100 per kilowatt hour of battery capacity. That's so cheap that you can have enough battery capacity to combine it with wind and to try to simulate this nuclear output. So if you need, in other words, if you need base load, go for wind and battery. And probably it would be cheaper than building a gigawatt of nuclear capacity that would probably cost you $10 billion.